The spaceport buzzed with activity as Hfy stood in the observation deck, her gaze fixed on the descending vessel. Sleek and shimmering in the early morning light, the science ship cut through the clouds with a precision that was almost unnatural. It was an elegant craft, devoid of any visible markings, its surface smooth and metallic, reflecting the pale glow of the Earth's atmosphere. To the untrained eye, it could have been mistaken for an experimental aircraft or a glistening artifact from another time, but Nix knew better. This was the arrival of Vexa, the Scion diplomat. Nix tightened her grip on the data pad in her hand, her heart pounding faster than she'd anticipated. Her mind raced with the implications of this assignment. Vexa wasn't just another alien envoy from the stars. She was a representative of a race that had intrigued Nix for years. The Scions, known for their advanced intellect and emotionless society, viewed human emotions as primitive and unnecessary. Their ability to connect telepathically across vast distances had eradicated the need for physical intimacy, warmth, or love. They had transcended the chaos of feelings, or so they believed. Nix, on the other hand, had always found their dispassionate worldview troubling. Fascinating but troubling. The soft hiss of air announced the ship's landing, and moments later, the door of the vessel slid open with a silent, seamless movement. From the shadows, a tall, slender figure emerged. Vexa stepped forward with a grace that seemed effortless, her movements precise, each one deliberate like she was following a silent code of conduct. Her skin had a luminous sheen, not quite silver, not quite pearl, somewhere in between. Tendrils of translucent hair floated gently behind her, moving as though they had a life of their own, catching the ambient light. Vexa's eyes, large and silver, scanned the surroundings before locking onto Nix. There was no smile, no expression of curiosity or wonder as she stepped forward, only the cold detachment of someone who had seen more worlds than Nix could ever dream of. Nix offered a hesitant smile, unsure of what kind of greeting was appropriate for a being who had never known touch in the way humans did. "I am Dr. Hfy, your liaison," Nix said, extending her hand in what felt like an embarrassingly human gesture. Vexa's gaze flicked to the outstretched hand, and after a brief pause, she reached out, her fingers cool and smooth against Nix's warm skin. The handshake was brief but not unpleasant, though Nix felt an electric jolt at the contact. Whether it was her own nerves or something in Vexa's touch, she wasn't sure. "Vexa," the alien said, her voice soft but sharp, like a melody that had never quite formed. "I understand you are here to assist me in understanding the physical and emotional aspects of your people." Nix nodded, trying to suppress her racing thoughts. She had studied countless alien species, but this felt different. The Scions didn't just observe, they analyzed, dissected. She was acutely aware that Vexa was here not to engage with Earth, but to study it. Emotions were a mystery to the Scions, one that Nix would have to somehow unravel for her. "Yes, I'll be guiding you through human culture," Nix replied, leading Vexa away from the landing platform and into the sprawling complex of the Earth Alliance Diplomatic Center. "You'll experience our world through physical sensation, touch, and emotion, things that are essential to us." "Touch," Vexa repeated, her voice cool and thoughtful. "We've read much about it. Your people place significant importance on physical contact. It is strange, unnecessary. In our society, we connect through thought." Nix glanced at her, trying to read something, anything, in Vexa's expression, but her face remained unreadable. As they walked through the corridors, the faint hum of machinery and the muted chatter of diplomats and officials swirled around them. But Nix felt isolated, trapped in a bubble with this alien who stood just slightly too still, too composed. "Touch is complicated," Nix said, her own thoughts jumbling. How could she explain something so visceral, so ingrained in the human experience? "It's more than physical. It's how we communicate, comfort, even show love. Touch can mean many things, depending on how it's given." Vexa remained silent for a moment, considering the words as they moved toward Nix's lab. The alien's eyes flickered with an almost imperceptible curiosity, though it was brief, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "We do not love," Vexa finally said, her voice even neutral. "It is illogical to us. Love clouds the mind, affects judgment. It introduces variables that disrupt our way of life. But that is precisely why I am here, to observe, to understand what your people seem to hold so dear. Nyx felt a twinge of sadness at the clinical way Vexa spoke of love, but she reminded herself that this was exactly what fascinated her about the Scions. They lived without the emotional highs and lows that defined human existence. To them, love was just another inefficient use of energy. You'll see, Nyx replied softly. It's not something that can be explained with words alone. They arrived at the entrance to Nyx's lab, a modest but advanced facility equipped with the latest technology for studying alien physiology and psychology. The door slid open, revealing a sterile yet inviting space filled with consoles, holographic displays, and an array of cultural artifacts Nyx had collected over the years. Vexa stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room with the same analytical detachment she had shown before. I look forward to this study, she said, turning to face Nyx with a gaze that felt almost piercing in its intensity. I hope it will be enlightening. Nyx smiled weakly, feeling the weight of the assignment ahead. This would be unlike anything she had ever done before. Vexa wasn't just a subject, she was a challenge, a puzzle that might never be fully solved. And yet, as she watched the Scion diplomat take in her surroundings, a quiet determination settled within her. This was only the beginning, and Nyx couldn't shake the feeling that despite Vexa's cold demeanor, something much deeper lay beneath the surface, something waiting to be discovered. Let us begin, Nyx said, her voice steady though her heart pounded in her chest. And so, the silent arrival of Vexa marked the beginning of an experiment that would change everything for both of them. The days passed slowly, each one a new opportunity for Dr. Nyx Hfy to chip away at the invisible wall Vexa had constructed around herself. Their sessions were clinical at first, focused on observation, data collection, and brief exchanges about humanity's baffling emotional spectrum. Vexa was, in every sense, a willing but distant subject. She analyzed everything with the precision of a scientist dissecting a specimen, detached, cold, and meticulous. Yet something about her mannerisms hinted at more, a faint curiosity hidden beneath the stoic surface. It was late one evening, after another long session, that Nyx decided it was time to push the boundaries. She had spent hours trying to convey the significance of touch in human relationships, how it wasn't just a physical sensation but a conduit for emotions. She had explained, showed examples, even demonstrated, but Vexa's responses had been mechanical, her understanding theoretical. Vexa remained unmoved, like an unfeeling observer in a world that thrived on sensation. But tonight, Nyx felt something had to change. Let's try something different, Nyx suggested, her voice soft but firm as she moved to the other side of the room where a simple wooden table stood. The lab, usually a cold, sterile space, had dim lighting now, casting soft shadows across the various scientific equipment. On the table lay a small folded cloth, simple and unassuming. Vexa, standing across the room, tilted her head slightly, her silver eyes gleaming in the low light. Different in what way? Nyx gestured to the table. Touch. I know you've never experienced it in a meaningful way before, but this is the only way I can truly show you what it means. Vexa stepped forward, her movements as fluid and precise as ever. She examined the table, then the cloth, her fingers hovering just above the surface but never making contact. It was as though she didn't know how to cross that final boundary, the threshold between cold observation and tactile experience. Nyx watched, sensing the tension in Vexa's hesitation, the slight falter in her normally flawless composure. Touch it, Nyx said gently, her voice barely above a whisper. Slowly, Vexa lowered her hand, her long, delicate fingers brushing the surface of the cloth. Nyx could see the subtle tremble in her hand, the faintest sign of uncertainty. For the first time since she had arrived, Vexa was not in complete control. Does it feel like anything to you? Nyx asked, stepping closer, her curiosity piqued. Vexa's fingers lingered on the cloth, tracing its soft texture. It is warm, soft, but beyond that it holds no meaning. Her voice was steady, but there was a flicker in her eyes, a glimpse of something else, something unspoken. Nyx moved closer, standing beside Vexa, her own hand reaching out to gently brush against the same cloth. Their fingers grazed against each other for just a second, an accidental touch, but enough to send a small shock of awareness through Nyx's body. She glanced at Vexa, whose eyes were still focused on the fabric, but something had changed. The usual cold detachment in her expression had softened, if only slightly. "It's not just about the texture," Nyx said quietly. "It's about connection. When we touch something or someone, we're sharing more than just sensation. We're sharing emotion, vulnerability, intimacy." Vexa's eyes flickered toward Nyx, her brow furrowing ever so slightly. "You believe touch carries emotion?" Nyx nodded. "More than you think. It's how we show affection, how we comfort each other, even how we express love." At the mention of love, Vexa's hand stilled, her fingers now resting motionless on the cloth. She turned to face Nyx fully, her silver eyes searching, as though trying to read something on Nyx's face that wasn't there before. "Love, you speak of it often. You say it is the most complex of human emotions, yet the most vital." "It is," Nyx replied, her voice steady but filled with an emotion she couldn't quite define. She had never expected to be explaining love to an alien, a being who had never felt it and perhaps never could. But standing there under the soft glow of the dim lights, with Vexa so close, it felt like something more than just an experiment. "Love is why we're here. It's what gives meaning to everything else." Vexa's gaze lingered on Nyx for a moment longer before she looked down at their hands, still brushing the cloth together. "I see. You believe it is something I must learn." Nyx's heart tightened at the detached way Vexa phrased it, but she nodded. "Yes, I think you'll feel it in time if you're open to it." Vexa's eyes, unreadable and deep as the stars, met Nyx's once more. "Then show me." And in that quiet, shared moment, Nyx knew this was the beginning of something far more profound than she had anticipated. The line between observation and emotion had begun to blur, and as she stood beside Vexa, the soft weight of the future pressed down on her. What had started as curiosity now felt like the beginning of a connection neither of them fully understood, but the pull between them was undeniable. And for the first time, Nyx wondered if touch, in all its complexity, would be enough to bridge the vast chasm between their worlds. Vexa sat across from Nyx in the dimly lit cafe, her eyes watching the steam rise from the cup of tea that had been placed in front of her. The low hum of conversation filled the space, but Vexa seemed to be elsewhere, her gaze distant, as if she were searching the air for answers that only she could see. Nyx had brought her here, thinking the warmth of a simple human experience, tea, conversation, companionship, might help Vexa understand what she had been trying to teach her for weeks. But Vexa was unreadable as always, silent, detached, even as she sat mere inches from Nyx, her posture perfect, her hands resting lightly on the table as though she had studied the position but never truly inhabited it. "You seem far away today," Nyx said, her voice gentle, hopping to draw Vexa back into the moment. Vexa blinked and turned her silver eyes toward Nyx, her gaze sharp but softening slightly. "I am contemplating," she replied, her voice cool but laced with something new, an edge that Nyx had not heard before. "Contemplating what?" Nyx asked, leaning forward, her curiosity piqued. Vexa glanced back at the steam rising from her cup. "Your world. It is full of contradictions. Humans seem driven by emotions that often disrupt their logic, yet you value these emotions even when they cause harm." Nyx smiled faintly, stirring her own cup. "That's part of the human experience. We're not just logical beings. Emotions drive us, they connect us. They're messy, yes, but they're what make life meaningful." Vexa's eyes lingered on Nyx's face for a moment longer than usual, her expression thoughtful. "I have never understood that to live in chaos, to be ruled by feeling. It is something my people consider a weakness, but here—" She hesitated, and for the first time, Nyx saw a flicker of something vulnerable in Vexa's gaze. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a crack in the cold, perfect exterior. Nyx reached across the table, her hand hovering above Vexa's for a moment before she gently placed it over the cool, smooth skin. "It doesn't have to be a weakness," she said softly. "It can be a strength. To feel is to be alive." Vexa looked down at their joined hands, her expression unreadable. Her fingers twitched beneath Nyx's touch, and slowly she turned her hand over, allowing their palms to press together. The contact was electric, more than it should have been for something so simple. Vexa's eyes widened, a faint tremble running through her. I don't understand, Vexa murmured, her voice lower now, almost fragile. This sensation when you touch me, it's different. Nyx's heart raced. She could feel the shift between them, the invisible tension that had been growing since they met. What had started as a scientific endeavor, an attempt to bridge the gap between their species, had become something far more personal. And now, as Vexa's fingers curled ever so slightly around her hand, Nyx knew they were crossing into uncharted territory. It's emotion, Nyx said softly, her eyes never leaving Vexa's. You're feeling something. It's new, I know, maybe confusing, but it's real. Vexa's breath seemed to hitch, her hand still clasping Nyx's. Emotion, she repeated, as though testing the word, trying to grasp its meaning. I have read about it, studied it, but now it's as if my mind is. Her voice faltered, and she pulled her hand away, the coolness returning to her demeanor as she stood abruptly, as though she had realized she had come too close to something dangerous. Nyx watched, her heart sinking slightly as the distance between them reasserted itself. I must go, Vexa said, her tone returning to the crisp, detached sound that Nyx had become accustomed to. I need time to process this. Nyx wanted to reach out to stop her, but something in Vexa's expression told her not to. She could see the conflict in Vexa's eyes, the Scion logic warring with the stirring emotions that were slowly breaking through. It wasn't time. Not yet. All right, Nyx said, standing as well, though her voice was heavy with something she couldn't quite name. But I'm here when you're ready to talk about it. Vexa's gaze softened for a split second, just long enough for Nyx to catch a glimpse of the turmoil beneath her calm exterior. Without another word, Vexa turned and left the cafe, her figure disappearing into the night, leaving Nyx alone at the table, her heart pounding in the quiet aftermath. Nyx sank back into her seat, her hand still tingling where Vexa had touched it. Something had shifted tonight, something neither of them fully understood yet, but Nyx could feel it. The growing connection between them, fragile but undeniable. Vexa's walls were beginning to crumble, and as much as Nyx wanted to help her, she knew Vexa had to find her own way through the unfamiliar maze of emotion. As Nyx sat alone in the dimly lit cafe, she couldn't help but wonder. When Vexa finally allowed herself to feel, truly feel, what would it mean for both of them? Would it bring them closer together, or would it tear them apart? She didn't know the answer, but one thing was certain. They were no longer just participants in an experiment. This was real, and it was only just beginning. The silence in Nyx's apartment was heavy, filled with the unspoken tension that had been building for days. Vexa stood by the window, her gaze fixed on the cityscape beyond, the twinkling lights of Earth's night sky reflecting in her silver eyes. Nyx watched her from across the room, her heart aching with a deep, unshakable longing that had begun to consume her. Since the night at the cafe, everything had changed between them. Vexa had withdrawn, spending more and more time in contemplation, her once cold and detached demeanor now shadowed by something else, something deeper, something she was struggling to understand. Nyx felt the distance like a physical barrier between them, yet she knew it was not indifference that kept Vexa away. It was fear, not fear of Nyx, but fear of what was awakening inside her. I've been summoned, Vexa said suddenly, her voice breaking the thick silence. Her words were soft but carried a weight that made Nyx's stomach twist. My people want me to return. Nyx's chest tightened as the reality of Vexa's statement settled over her like a shroud. Return? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why? Vexa turned from the window to face her, her expression as unreadable as ever, but Nyx could see the flicker of something in her eyes. They believe I have been compromised, that I have spent too much time immersed in your world, in your emotions. Nyx stood, her heart racing now, her mind swirling with a million questions. Compromised? What does that mean? You've been doing what they sent you here to do, to study us, to understand us. Vexa took a step closer, her silver eyes locking onto Nyx's. They did not anticipate the depth of human emotion. They underestimated the impact it could have on me. Her voice softened, and for the first time, Nyx heard the vulnerability in it, the quiet tremor that spoke of something fragile beneath Vexa's calm exterior. I underestimated it. Nyx swallowed hard, the room seeming to close in around them. And now they want you to leave, she said, the words bitter on her tongue. Just like that. Vexa's gaze dropped to the floor, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, as if she were holding herself together. They see emotion as a flaw, Nyx, a weakness. They fear what I am becoming. Nyx moved closer, her heart pounding louder with each step, until she was standing right in front of Vexa, so close she could feel the coldness of her skin radiating off her. "And what are you becoming?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper now. Vexa hesitated, her eyes flickering up to meet Nyx's, and in that moment, Nyx saw everything. The fear, the confusion, the longing that had been building between them since the day they met. Vexa's hand twitched at her side, as though she wanted to reach out but didn't know how. "I don't know," Vexa whispered. "I feel things I've never felt before. When I'm near you, it's like I'm not myself, like something inside me is breaking free, something I don't understand." Nyx's breath caught in her throat, the weight of Vexa's words hitting her harder than she expected. She reached out, her fingers brushing against Vexa's cool hand, and this time Vexa didn't pull away. Instead, she let Nyx take her hand, their fingers intertwining in a quiet, unspoken act of defiance. "You're not broken, Vexa," Nyx said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're feeling, that's what's happening, you're letting yourself feel." Vexa's eyes searched Nyx's face, as though trying to find answers there that she couldn't find within herself. "But if I feel, I cannot go back," she said, her voice trembling. "My people will not accept me. They will see me as contaminated." The word struck Nyx like a knife, and she shook her head, tightening her grip on Vexa's hand. "You're not contaminated. You're changing. You're becoming more than what they expected, more than what they understand. You're becoming human." Vexa's breath hitched, and for the first time, Nyx saw tears welling in her eyes, small, glistening drops that seemed so foreign on her perfect, otherworldly face. Vexa blinked them away quickly, as if ashamed of the display, but Nyx could feel the battle raging within her. "I don't know how to stop it," Vexa whispered, her voice cracking with the weight of her emotions. "I don't know how to go back to what I was." "You don't have to," Nyx said softly, stepping even closer, her free hand reaching up to gently touch Vexa's face, her thumb brushing away a tear. The contact sent a shock wave through both of them, and for a moment everything else faded away, the science, the politics, the looming departure. All that mattered was this moment, the closeness between them, the quiet understanding that had been simmering just beneath the surface for weeks. Vexa's hand trembled in Nyx's, but she didn't pull away. She didn't retreat into the cold, logical shell that had protected her for so long. Instead, she leaned into Nyx's touch, her breath unsteady, her gaze filled with something raw and real. "I can't stay," Vexa murmured, her voice barely audible, as if speaking the words was almost too much to bear. "They'll come for me." Nyx's heart ached at the finality of it, but she knew deep down that this moment couldn't last forever. Vexa belonged to a world that would never accept her newfound emotions, and Nyx was just a fleeting glimpse of what could be. But as she stood there, holding Vexa close, Nyx knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, whatever distance came between them, their connection was real, and that was something neither of their worlds could take away. "I don't want to lose you," Nyx whispered, her voice breaking. Vexa closed her eyes, her fingers tightening around Nyx's. "You won't," she said softly. "You're already inside me." And in that moment, Nyx understood. Vexa was right. Whatever happened, they were bound together now in ways that transcended time, space, and even species. But the longing, the forbidden, impossible longing, was a fire they could never fully extinguish. The air was crisp and cold on the rooftop, the sharp wind biting against Nyx's skin as she stood beside Vexa, the weight of their shared silence pressing down on her. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly across the sky, twinkling in a vast, infinite expanse. Nyx had always found solace in the stars, but tonight they felt distant, untouchable, unreachable, much like the woman standing beside her. Vexa's silver eyes were fixed on the horizon, her face illuminated by the soft glow of Earth's city lights. She was dressed in the flowing garments of her people, the translucent fabric shimmering like stardust as it moved with the wind. Nyx's heart ached at the sight of her, knowing this was the last time she would stand so close, the last time she would feel Vexa's presence beside her. "They're coming for me soon," Vexa said softly, her voice carrying a heaviness that Nyx had never heard before. "My people, the ship will be here by dawn." Nyx nodded, her throat tight with unshed tears. She had known this moment would come, the moment Vexa would leave, returning to a world that could never accept the changes that had taken root within her, a world that had no place for the emotions she had begun to feel. And yet, even with that knowledge, Nyx wasn't ready to say goodbye. "I thought we'd have more time," Nyx whispered, her voice breaking as she fought to keep her composure. Vexa turned to her then, her expression unreadable, but her eyes, the eyes that had once been cold and detached, were filled with a quiet sorrow. "Time is something neither of our worlds can give us, Nyx. I wish it were different." Nyx stepped closer, her hand reaching out to touch Vexa's arm, feeling the cool, smooth texture of her skin beneath her fingers. "There has to be another way," she said, her voice trembling with desperation. "You don't have to go back. You could stay here with me." Vexa's gaze softened, and she placed her hand over Nyx's, their fingers intertwining. "If I stay, they will come for me, and if they find me changed, I will be seen as a threat. You know what they will do." Nyx's heart clenched at the thought. The Scions valued logic, order, and control above all else. Vexa, with her newfound emotions and humanity, would be seen as an anomaly, something dangerous to their way of life. Nyx had read enough about science society to know that such threats were not tolerated. "They'll take you from me either way, won't they?" Nyx whispered, her tears finally spilling over. Vexa's hand tightened around hers, and she nodded, the faintest tremor running through her. "Yes." The silence between them stretched out, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city below. Nyx wanted to scream, to rage against the universe for bringing them together only to tear them apart, but she couldn't. All she could do was hold Vexa's hand, feel the weight of their connection, and pray that somehow this wasn't the end. "Do you regret it?" Nyx asked suddenly, her voice raw, "coming here, feeling everything?" Vexa shook her head, her silver eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "No," she said softly. "I don't regret any of it. You've shown me what it means to feel, to love. That is something I will carry with me no matter where I go." Nyx's chest tightened, her breath catching in her throat. "I love you," she whispered, the words escaping her before she could stop them. Vexa's eyes widened slightly, her breath hitching at the confession. She had never known love before Nyx, never understood the depth of emotion that came with it. But now, standing on the edge of this moment, with the stars above them and the world below, she felt it deep within her. A warmth that had once been foreign but now was as much a part of her as the logic that had once ruled her. "And I love you," Vexa whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of the words. "I didn't think I was capable of it, but now I can't imagine a life without it." Nyx's tears flowed freely now, and she stepped forward, wrapping her arms around Vexa, pulling her close. Vexa's body was cool against her own, but the embrace was warm, filled with everything they couldn't say, everything they couldn't change. They stood like that for what felt like an eternity, their hearts beating in time with each other, the world falling away around them. The soft hum of a distant ship broke the silence, and Nyx knew the moment had come. Vexa pulled back slightly, her fingers brushing Nyx's cheek, wiping away the tears that clung to her skin. "I will never forget this," Vexa said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "You've changed me, Nyx, in ways I can't fully understand yet, but I know I'm not the same." Nyx's heart ached at the finality of her words, but she nodded, her hand reaching up to cover Vexa's. "You've changed me too," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'll never forget you." Vexa leaned in, her lips brushing Nyx's in a soft, lingering kiss that tasted of sorrow and longing. It was a goodbye, a final, bittersweet connection that would stay with them both long after the stars had faded. When Vexa finally pulled away, her eyes were filled with unshed tears. "You are inside me now, Nyx. No matter where I go, you will always be a part of me." Nyx choked on a sob, watching as Vexa stepped back, the glow of the approaching ship casting her in an ethereal light. The ship descended slowly, its sleek silver form hovering just above the rooftop, waiting for Vexa to return to a world that could never understand what she had become. Vexa turned one last time, her eyes locking with Nyx's, and in that moment, 1,000 unspoken words passed between them. Then, without another word, she stepped into the ship, the door sliding shut behind her with a soft hiss. Nyx stood frozen, her heart breaking as the ship lifted off, rising higher and higher until it was nothing more than a distant speck against the sky. She watched it disappear into the stars, her chest heavy with the weight of their parting. And as the night grew darker and the wind grew colder, Nyx whispered into the silence, her voice breaking with every word. "You're inside me too." And in that vast, infinite distance between stars, Nyx knew that their love, though impossible and forbidden, would never truly fade.